The reading from Tagore, who was a Unitarian who lived in India and was the man who gave Gandhi the honorific title Mahatma, indicates just how difficult it is to be good. Because when you choose to step out to right a wrong, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position. And it is an act of hope and an act of courage. And it's an act where you take your losses before you find any gains. And even knowing that you might not find the gains, but somehow find that salvation or freedom in the giving. And this sacrifice was also demanded by Jesus to his disciples in the New Testament. In Matthew 12, while Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mothers and brothers stood outside wanting to speak to him, and someone told them, "Your mother and brothers are standing outside waiting to speak to you." And he replied to him, "Who is my mother? Who is my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, saying, "Here are my brothers and brother. Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." And then again in Luke, someone came up to him and said, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family." And Jesus replied, "No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." The evidence suggests that Jesus had a radical notion of family. Family was not those who were joined to you by blood, but those who were joined in a common cause. Elsewhere he says he's not here to bring peace, but a sword that divides families. The Jesus of the New Testament was sweeping people up into a powerful social movement. He was seeking to make some people larger than the parochial bonds of kinship. He was offering something greater, but he was also demanding a sacrifice. The question I ask today, does changing the world require the sacrificing of one's family? Anyone who has children, or has had children, or helps people who have children, know that children take a lot of time. It's hard to create world peace when you are being constantly interrupted by waking in the middle of the night, changing diapers, cooking meals, and if you feed them, they just keep growing. And you end up buying new clothes every 6 months, and you drive them to school and the sporting events, and that spouse or partner, they're also demanding. They want attention too. Another rally, another committee meeting takes away from that time together. And if you and your spouse find some great task to do together, you might have to leave the kids at home. For example, in 1938, Hitler threatened to unleash a European war unless an area of Czechoslovakia with a large German population was ceded to Germany. The leaders of Britain, France, Italy, and Germany held a conference in 1938, and it became known as the Munich Pact. They agreed to the German annexation of the Sudetenland in exchange with a pledge of peace from Hitler. The Munich Agreement gave Hitler the Sudetenland, stunned Unitarians in the United States who had close ties to Czech churches. The flow of political dissidents, Jews, and other refugees from Germany, Austria, and the Sudetenland into the Unitarian Church in Prague increased. Robert Dexter, director of the American Unitarian Association, Department of Social Relations, recalled, "I knew there would be untold suffering in the Nazi-occupied territory. I was equally convinced that something should be done about it by those of us who felt we had an obligation to aid our friends who had been so betrayed." So in February, Martha and Waitzel Sharp sailed to Europe as representatives of the Unitarians to see what could be done. Wade still was a minister of the Wesley Hills Unitarian Church, and Martha had a degree in social work. They arrived in Prague in February, hoping to help some of the 250,000 refugees who had poured into that city. Within 3 weeks, they stood in the streets of Prague with thousands of others watching the Nazi troops march in and take over the whole country. For 5 more months, they carried out the rescue and relief operation. They tried to match endangered people with job opportunities outside the country so that they would be eligible for visas. The Sharps left Europe on August 30. Before they reached New York, Germany had invaded Poland and World War II was underway. They had 2 children, ages 2 and 7, who they left with a member of the church. And then their stay in Prague was much longer than they anticipated as the situation on the ground changed. And when they finally did return home, what did they do? They founded the Unitarian Service Committee and went back to Europe and worked there on and off for another 6 years. They're heroes of our denomination. Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Memorial Organization, declared them to be righteous among the nations in 2004. Only the second and third Americans to be so honored. They made a decision that few of us could make. How does one make a decision to risk one's life and leave your children at home, knowing that you very well could be killed? I admire the Sharps, but I confess I am more like Madonna, who was quoted as saying, "I want to be like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and John Lennon, but I want to stay alive." The world needs our efforts, but at what price? Martin Luther King left 4 young children, ages 5 to 12, when he was killed. One could argue that his work secured a better future for his children, yet I'm sure there were times that they missed their father, even when he was still alive. The Catholic Church upholds the tradition of celibacy partly because it frees the priest from familial cares, and so that he can focus on the lives of the people he serves. Susan B. Anthony, the great crusader for abolition and women's rights, lived a life without marriage and family because she was so busy fighting for the equality of women. Yet her best friend, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, stayed closer to home and had 7 children. While Anthony was out on the lecture circuit, Stanton decided to organize the first women's rights convention near her home in Seneca Falls, New York. And then she later wrote the Women's Bible, a critique of patriarchal religion. And so you see, there is a way that people can contribute to the betterment of the world, each according to their own gifts and situation. In a study by Purdue University called Family Volunteering, it was an exploratory study on the impact of families who volunteer. Families who volunteered together talked about the benefits, about it bringing the family closer together, that the value system is strengthened by the volunteering. Children see parents are involved. It also builds an extended family among youth and other youth. And there's strengths in numbers. The family gets more done than with just one individual. And then there's those side benefits to youth, such as help with job and college applications, just resume fodder, and then they meet people in the community and all that type of thing. And then sometimes it's just fun to actually do something together. Those who in this congregation who have worked at the welcome table or done different things, helping with the vigils or doing other acts in the community, realize that this is something we can do as a family together. Now, there is differences between parents and children about what is beneficial about this, because, the parents really like it because I think they're giving something to their kids. But youth, sometimes it can be a stigma. You did all that work and you didn't get paid. What a sucker you must be. And also, teenagers may see volunteering as a penance if it's required as part of their religious organization. Now, our religious organization isn't one that sees good works as a penance. It's not even an obligation to earn one's salvation. Unitarian Universalists try to be good for goodness sake. We hope to find satisfaction in the intrinsic value of the action. In the words of Tagore, let's not see the grace only in our successes, but in the action itself. When I look at the challenges posed by Jesus in the gospel, I think we're fortunate indeed, because in some ways we have it both ways. Jesus sets up a choice between the kingdom of God and family. He suggests that family should be disregarded as we move on to higher things. Here at the UU Fellowship, we can honor both the family of origin and the family gathered here. Some of us may feel estranged from our family. They may reject our devotion to the causes of religious freedom and human rights. And those who are estranged can create that new family here. We can find a mutual commitment to each other and improving the world and ourselves. Yet, many of us come here with a family. And working with the Religious Education Program, the Social Action Council, we have found many ways of intergenerational action. Our biological families in this community are expanded by working with those kindred spirits who also seek justice. And perhaps that is what the Sharps were doing when they traveled into the heart of evil. They had a church, an extended family, that for some reason did not feel like they were abandoning their children, but their children were enveloped in the love of that community that they had, even when their parents were far away in a dangerous land. And that's the type of family and support we can give each other here. That we know that some of us, perhaps like Susan B. Anthony, have the freedom to go out and put lives on the line, while others of us support that in other ways. We have the ability to come together and have a shared sacrifice. And a shared sacrifice is something that allows us to give more. Because when I'm sitting alone in my room watching the news channel, I can feel very, very small. Because so much is needed. So much is left undone. But somehow, knowing that I am part of a community gives me extra courage. And it lets me know that despite my failings, the person next to me may be able to pick up the pieces that I let drop. And so I open it to you. The idea of how do we give more? How does our sacrifice hold us accountable? How do we do it? Just flat out, how do we do it? Because I look across this congregation, and I'm the only one here that's paid to do it. There's a couple of social workers here who are also kind of paid to do it, and a couple of teachers who are also kind of paid to do it, that giving to the community. But a lot of us have jobs, and it's just the matter of trying to make sure that we have enough for next week to pay our bills because we have a kid who needs a safe home, and a kid that has a lot of demands. And so how do we help each other? How do we help each other give? Give more of ourselves, our time, and our money. I'm going to look for the mic and open the floor to ideas.